five sheets, which are it's another way of looking at ourselves. The Annamaya sheet is the one that's the physical body, the one that depends on food and is made essentially of food. Pranamaya is the vital air sheath, which is, say, responsible for the respiratory, the inhalation, exhalation, and all of the respiratory functions. Manomaya is the mental sheath. Vijnanamaya is the intellectual sheath. And these three sheaths also cover physiologically, they cover, whether it's the circulatory, the blood, whether it is the reproductive system, nervous system, all of the physiological functions that occur inside. Those are considered in these three sheaths. But in addition, we know that Manomaya is the mental sheath. We know that Vijnanamaya is the intellectual sheath, and Anandamaya, which is the most subtle innermost sheath. Innermost meaning the most subtle is Anandamaya, which is a bliss sheath. But the point of giving these sheaths is to tell us that the outer sheaths are controlled by the inner ones. For example, let's say the Pranamaya sheath in a way controls the Annamaya sheath, because we know that, or the Manomaya sheath controls the others, because we know that when something is wrong physiologically, then the body feels the effect of it. Then the inner systems are not up to working in perfect health, then the body suffers. When the mind is unhappy, the mind is taken up with some sorrow, we feel the effects in the outer layers, right? We don't feel hungry, we don't feel like doing anything, we feel sick. All of that comes because these sheaths, the innermost, are in a way controlling the outer ones. The other way they look at things is humans having three bodies. The Sthula Sharira is a gross one. The Sukshma Sharira is the subtle one, consisting again of the mind and the thoughts. The causal is the Karana Sharira, which is even more subtle. I'm just giving these classifications that I've collected from the notes that I have studied. They may come in useful as we explore more about the scriptures. Humans are a mix of three temperaments. We all know this: Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva is all those feelings, all those the inner purity that we experience when we are calm. Rajas is ambition, activity, that which makes us really go out and be really be extroverted. Tamas is lethargy of any form. Humans experience three states of consciousness. Those are the waker, and dreamer, and deep sleeper. And the reason that these are important is there is a lot of explanation to understand ourselves. These concepts are used a lot. It is said that when the consciousness identifies with the waker, when the consciousness identifies with the gross body, so that means it's consciousness, it's aware of the body and the mind and the intellect, then it goes through an experience which is the waker experience. So essentially, we're awake. We have all our faculties working. The same thing when the consciousness associates with the subtle body, the Sukshma Sarira, it identifies only with parts. So let's say someone is asleep and they're having a dream. At that point, when they're asleep, they have no idea of their other characteristics, whether they're male, female, or what their name is, none of that. the physical body is out of the picture. It's just the mental realm that's playing the dream out. And that experience is called the dreamer experience. When the consciousness identifies with the causal body, the most subtle body that has been described as the deep sleeper. So sometimes we sleep beautifully, we have no dreams, nothing. Get up and say, I slept so well. So there is some part of us that is calling myself as I and saying that I slept very soundly. And it's saying that when I'm awake, so it exists both when I was awake and it exists also when I was asleep. It's something common, and it's the thing that we call as the consciousness principle. Sanatana Dharma tells us to pay more attention to that principle, and in fact, make that the center of our thoughts in order to live a better life, in order to be more happy and in order to really find the true power of ourselves. Because often the mind has us in a disturbed state, which prevents us from doing our best. At any given time, we're worrying about the past, we're worrying about the future, we're afraid of the future, or having regrets from the past. And this is all the play of the minds. If you really want to get beyond all this, there is a way. That's what Sanatana Dharma is telling us. And again, this is going to be very brief. So we have the options to follow Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. The thing that we also learn is that every action will become the cause of an effect. In other words, will produce a reaction. We have 5 obligations, and these are debts that we owe. The moment we are born, we owe debts to rishis, devas, forefathers, and the elements or nature and other humans. So then the humans have different work proclivities. Like everybody has a different, I mean, not everybody, but Sanatana Dharma has classified that some people are prone to doing a particular type of work, and so some others are doing a different type of work. These have been categorized into 4, which is the priest class, warrior, leader, protector, merchant, business oriented, and then worker or specialized skills. All right, so I just want to obviously have to stop at this point to at least talk about the Varna system. So what I wanted to point out, what struck me is that there is a high degree of systematization. Every single thing has been categorized to great detail. And in the same fashion, our temperament when it comes to doing an occupation has been also classified. So the Varna system wasn't created just so that we can categorize people and give them a hierarchy. That wasn't the purpose. Just like everything else is painstakingly categorized, human tendency towards work based on their sattva, rajas, tamas was classified. And the Varna classes were not created by birth or jati. They were created per temperament, that is guna, and occupational interests, karma. And the reason for this is to ensure that all forms of knowledge would continue to not be preserved and understood, but interpreted and upheld. But let's first go back to the Vedas and the meaning of dharma. I think we just started talking about the Vedas, where we said the Vedas are believed to have been have come from divine source. There was no person behind, there was no founder behind this. And for several eras, they were just communicated by word of mouth until eventually Maharshi Vedavyasa took the knowledge of the Vedas and he actually systematized it and classified it into the 4 Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharvana Veda. Up to that point, it had just been orally coming through, that knowledge, whatever was in the Vedas. And to talk a little bit about what was in the Vedas, we should go to the Dharma. Dharma, again, the concept of Dharma is its divine law of being, righteousness and all that, right? So we really have to dig a lot to figure out what Dharma means. And Dharma means so many different things that just that appreciation of the amount of knowledge that was in the Vedas that was conveying the Dharma. For that purpose, I'll just talk a little bit about Dharma, what Dharma was all about. So, as we said, the root word is dhri, meaning to sustain or to carry or to hold. And it refers to the underlying order in nature and human life and behavior that is considered to be in accordance with that order. The word dharma is used to mean nyaya, justice. It's moral values of life, pious obligations of individuals. We just read about the Pancha Maharunas, which are the 5 great obligations we have, 5 huge obligations. All of this is considered as dharma. Anything that sustains human life in harmony with nature is considered to be aligned with dharma. In the Mahabharata, it was said that therefore, that which ensures the welfare of living beings is surely dharma. The learned rishis have declared that that which sustains is dharma. So other quotations, dharma is that which is indicated by the Vedas as conducive to the highest good. In addition to dharma, we also have the swadharma aspect. Swadharma is individual dharmas which are based on satya, that is truth, ahimsa, non-violence in thought, word, and deed, and moral values that are considered righteous actions. Actions, our swadharma also includes our ashrama. We saw that ashramas are the phases of life, right? So in different phases, we might have different sets of obligations. The dharma of a student is to acquire knowledge and skills. The dharma of a householder is to raise the family and also support the community. And that of a retiree is to advise and guide the younger generations. Actions that are associated with varna dharma, that is one's profession, are considered right actions. And the duty of a soldier may be to take the life of an enemy, whereas the duty of a doctor is to save that life, or even that life, or even the life of the enemy. So dharma is something that obviously depends on the varna and the ashrama and other aspects as well. It's not easily described or defined. Dharma is so anything that helps to unite and develop pure divine love and universal brotherhood is dharma. Anything that creates discord and disharmony and foments hatred is adharma. Dharma is the cementer and sustainer of social life. And there's so much said about this. I have placed the links wherever I've gathered information. I've placed the links in this presentation, which Veena and I will make sure you all get that. The links are provided as references at the end and should have more information if anyone is interested in looking at this more closely. There is in Atharvana Veda says Prithvim Dharmana Dhritam. This world is upheld by dharma. Dharma is so called because it bears and holds up entire creation. It is a collection of universal principles without which there would be no existence of this creation. Dharma is the loving hand of the Divine Mother who protects the entire creation from total annihilation and holds it up for further development. Dharma is Sanatana and pervades all religions because it comprises of all that is eternal and internal in a religion. A life in accordance with Dharma is a life in accordance with the laws of nature and creation. So obviously, if we think about it, we all know that we have to support environment. We can't afford to take it for granted. We know that by now very well. All of that is built into whatever is dharma. So it's a divine principle, the law of being, and that which elevates one. It leads, dharma is also that which leads you to the path of perfection and glory. Of course, God is the center of dharma, because it is said that self-realization is the highest dharma. So according to Sanatana Dharma, at least. Maharshi Jaimini defines dharma as that which is enjoined by the Vedas and is not ultimately productive of suffering. Anyway, there are different definitions given here. Finally, we also have heard, if you protect it, it will protect you. Anybody who has followed a life of dharma, knows that they can derive security from that. Just knowing that they have done the right thing. We say in our current lingo, just doing the right thing. That's what it is. And Sant Tulsidas has said, in whose heart resides dharma or benevolence, for such a person, there's nothing that is difficult to attain. Lastly, I'll just say one more thing. Sorry?
We don't see it on the screen.
Yes. Okay. So I didn't add everything to the slides. Okay. So in addition to the slides, if you see those links that I've put in there, that should take you to those pages. Yeah, I didn't know. I was trying to balance the content. So persons who render selfless service to other human beings are the greatest. Obviously, we know that. But why is it so important to go into so much detail about dharma? Is that to make the point that if dharma is something that is hard, it's complex, it's not that easy to say what is dharma and what is not, right? It's not. We need a reference point. For the Sanatana Dharmis, at least, that reference was the Vedas. But the Vedas themselves are so complicated. So how are we going to ever know what the Vedas are telling us? My point from all of this talk is just to say that this again explains why they had to come up with a set of people who would dedicate their lives to learning the scripts, learning the Vedas and put aside all other selfish pursuits. They created this class of priests or brahmanas whose job it was going to be to understand the Vedas. And these Vedas are hugely complex, written in Sanskrit, and they are very huge, as we're going to see when you look at the scriptures again. So this is not to say that people didn't suffer because of the caste system. We know that they did. And at least we can see that the purpose was not to oppress, but to preserve and protect the greatest gift of knowledge that ever existed, which came from Supreme God himself, the Vedas. So at least as people who are interested in this topic, it just helps us to look at this and say, yes, there were people who took advantage of this, but that was not the intention for which it was created. People weren't supposed to adopt a caste just by birth. It was their tendencies that actually define and what their interests were. So this explains the need for the priest class, but what about the other classes? So I think the way I'm looking at it, from the information I'm gathering, it's For example, this anthropologist Arthur Morris Hocart did a study, and he said, and he did an unbiased study. He said every occupation is a priesthood. It was that way when it turned out that we had some very special skills. We had like 64 skills in those days, or even probably more. And every one of those skills had to be preserved. And the best way was for father to teach it to son, or mother to teach it to daughter, so that it would keep going. Whether it's the weaving of gold saris, that, the weaving processes, anything from all of these skills in those society, in those days, in that society, were transmitted through this Varna system. So essentially, the objective was to ensure continuity of knowledge systems, not to create